and you were notified that one of the people arrested that ended up in county court had a mental illness and hadn't yet gotten to arraignment. How would you handle that?
Well, I think it has to be handled consistently, and for that you need an actual program that handles people pre-booking, that diverts them out of that system for low-level crimes. Because there are many mental health crises in the county, and unfortunately 45% of the people in our jail right now, as we're talking, have some kind of mental health issue that caused them to be in there in the first place. And so if we just lowered that by 2 or 3% in the first year, we would save hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's money that could be better used for mental health purposes to social workers, because it's very, very expensive once you arraign someone. You've started the train rolling of going to court, a defense attorney on one side, prosecuting attorney on the other, the judge on the bench, the court reporters. It costs about $8,000–9,000 a day to run a courtroom. So you're talking about $1,000 an hour process instead of a pre-booking diversion process like the law enforcement assisted diversion they have up in Seattle or in Spokane and in many other cities across the United States, to save money and to help people at the earliest possible point before they're caught up in the justice system, before they lose their job, before they've been off their meds for a week, a month, before being released from custody. All those things are not really taken care of right now. I want to make the law enforcement assisted diversion program, which failed under the incumbent's watch, work here in Thurston County, work in the city of Olympia, work in any city that wants to cooperate with that. Because it's working in other cities, why can't it work here? Someone else is driving. Someone else isn't putting the effort in. We got to change that. Yes?
As a former legislator, I was very concerned about police and community relations. And I'm just wondering, how would your office work with the police department? And I'm also new to Thurston County. Since I retired, I just moved down the last few months. So what's going on here in terms of how the police department understands the community around it, what's changing? I know there was a shooting a couple of years ago. I had a bill related to that. How does the prosecutor's office lead the change we need to see in community police relations?
I think that's a great question. I think first of all we have to recognize that the concerns of the community about conflicts of interest, about having friends investigating friends, are entirely legitimate, and it looks bad the way the system exists. And I don't think the answer is to tell the community, hey, this is our system and it's working great. I think you have to listen to community concerns, and I think you have to take steps to address those. One of the things that I'd like to do is to set up a more independent process for police use of force investigations, and make sure that it's not like Thurston County Sheriff investigating Olympia Police Department shooting, because they work together all the time. There's only about 100 sheriffs, deputy sheriffs, and 30-something Olympia PD on duty at any given time. And they work together, they cooperate, and that's the way it should be. But you can't really expect an unbiased investigation with people who work together that closely. So I'd like to set up a system where it's more of a regional thing, where people from other jurisdictions who don't normally work together come in and look at those investigations, those excessive use of force investigations. Because even if the sheriff has done an exemplary job and is trying to fulfill their obligations to the letter, the fact is there's going to be some subconscious implicit bias in their work, and even if they did a perfect job, people don't recognize it as fair because of the inherent conflict of interest that anyone can see when you have people investigating other people who know each other. So I want to change that. Thank you.
We had a Thurston deputy about 2 weeks ago who got caught molesting an inmate and was let go on no bail. Doesn't that seem hinky in the sense that you have it to where people like that can get away with no bail? They don't have to pay bail in order to get out, but other people get a huge bail if they want to get out.
Yeah, the bail system as it exists is not about what it should be, which is public safety, okay, and protecting victims. if you have someone who, right now, the system we have of cash bail, it doesn't work, and I wanna change that. And let me give you just a couple of examples why. If you have someone who's killed 2 or 3 people on different occasions, and they're arrested and charged with murder, and the bail is set at $10 million, if they can post $10 million bail, they're out and free, despite any danger to the public, okay? Whereas if you have someone who, say, shoplifted an expensive purse from an department store, and the bail is set, well, we're gonna set bail at $1,000 to make sure they come back. Well, if that person can't make bail, and they made that mistake, and they've got a job, they've got a house, they've got kids, but they made that mistake by taking that purse, that person can't bail out of jail. They're gonna lose that job within 3 days for not showing up to work, 3 days or a week. Their kids are not gonna be doing well in school, not being fed properly. And in fact, if that person is providing income to the household, even if they're just one of the people contributing to keeping the apartment, keeping the house, the risk of homelessness goes way up. And suddenly the family is out on the street, people who had nothing to do with that crime. Now, some people would say, well, that's the fault of the person who committed the crime, and I agree with that to some extent. But the fact is, we've got to look at the harm to the whole system and the strains on other social services that happen when something like that occurs. You know, it doesn't happen every time. We're talking about increasing the probability that something like that is going to happen. When we do that, there's more cost for the county, there's more cost for the health department, there's more cost to the schools to deal with discipline issues. You know, there's cost to the homeless services, and there's just more disorder, and there's also a risk of violence against the children, or the children are acting out against other children in school. There's a whole cascade of effects if you don't consider that. So I would get rid of cash bail to the extent possible. It might take a state constitutional amendment to do it, but I would be in there helping to work on proper legislation or a proper amendment to get that done. Because we just can't keep going the same way we're doing. We can't afford it, for one. We don't have a blank check to solve these problems by increasing social services exponentially, or increasing our jail system further. Like, our jail right now is twice the size it should be. King County, with a population 8 times the size of Thurston County, has a 2,000 bed jail. The size of ours should be about 250, give or take a few, right? It's 488 beds here in Thurston County, almost 500. And again, they want to increase it by 110 beds. Why aren't we talking about trying to solve the overcrowding at the jail first? Why are we obligating ourselves to spend $11 million on that addition at the jail? And do you know where that $11 million came from? You know, with all the emergencies being declared by the county on homelessness and the city of Olympia on homelessness, that $11 million comes from the real estate excise tax fund number 2, which the state legislature said, hey, cities, counties, you can use in 2017 and 2018 up to $1 million each year for low-income housing. We don't have that money. We're going to be spending it on an addition to the jail unless something changes. So I'm gonna take a few more questions. Yeah.
As someone who until recently, listening to you talk, had never heard of the diversion program, can you describe it in lay terms? What is it?
Sure. The program, Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion, was created in Seattle, basically in a joint effort by essentially the Public Defender's Office and local police departments, Seattle PD and a couple of others, regarding some problem areas starting in downtown Seattle. And basically they hammered out everything, agency to agency, input taken, and developed it slowly as to what's really going to work, how are we all going to cooperate to do this in the system, and they came up with something that works great. Here in Thurston County, what happened is the incumbent said, hey everybody, we're going to have lead, here's lead, it's going to work this way, and the prosecutor's going to retain all discretion as to what happens to your people. So unfortunately, it failed, almost inevitably. So, yes, sir.
Let's talk about the five misconducts.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk about it.
Oh,
Because he seems to deny it.
okay. I don't think he did. I think he moved the goalpost. So what happened is, the incumbent has said on a number of occasions that his prosecutors have never committed misconduct, prosecutorial misconduct, or been found to have committed that by any court during his 2 terms in office. And when the first time I heard him say that, I knew that that wasn't the case, because I've seen Court of Appeal decisions, finding misconduct. And additionally, I knew of a case that I was involved in where the judge had found misconduct at the trial court level. So I knew it was untrue at both levels. And so when he said that at the forum at the church, the Unitarian Universalist Church, we put out an ad that showed him saying that those very words, that there had been no misconduct. And we put like 5 of those cases on there. And he didn't like that very much. Yes.
So, I just first want to say thank you. It's been an honor to interview people that know you. For you guys that don't know me, I work for Real, and we've been interviewing people that are voting for Victor, and I didn't realize it was going to be so emotional. But justice is something that touches people's lives on like the deepest levels. And people spoke about you in such an emotional way and felt so connected to you that you liked people, that they could talk to you about their problems, that they would be heard, that they would be seen as human beings. I've been researching this area for a while, and it's only since working with Real that I've realized that the prosecutors have such power in determining the fate of people's lives once they get involved in the system. And I'm just wondering, how did you come to be a person that can fight for this position and yet do it through a lens that still sees people as human beings and has empathy for all of the variables that lead them to be in these circumstances? Like, how did you come to be a person that cares and yet still feels that you can execute in this position? Because it seems that the status quo is that someone that's a prosecutor has to be, the caricature is somebody that has to just be, tough on crime and almost use that position to punish people without considering all of the variables. So how did you develop this mindset, and what was the thing that catalyzed you to actually have courage to take this platform, because it's a courageous platform?
I am just a human being, and I'm imperfect. I don't know, I just felt like I had to do this. When I first heard the incumbent say that there was no misconduct in the prosecutor's office, that was the moment I realized someone had to run against him. And I tried to talk to defense attorneys locally who basically were afraid to do that, and felt like it was inevitable, that nothing could be changed in Thurston County. I believe in Thurston County. I want Thurston County to change for the better. But I didn't want to be the person. When I couldn't find anybody to run, I even tried to recruit somebody from the defense side up in Seattle who had left the defender's office to run for Thurston County Prosecutor. He declined. But I just felt, I knew about the 2 men who were shot by the Olympia police, and the lack of caring about what the policies were and whether or not the prosecutor should speak out on whether policy should be looked at and perhaps changed or improved. And I looked at the videos of people saying that, and the helplessness of the people who wanted to change but didn't really know how to answer the responses they were getting. And I thought, this is this year of distress and unsettlement in the country. We can't depend on the federal government to save us, to help us. We can only depend on what we can do locally. And I realized that if I was gonna continue to live in Thurston County, and someday I read the paper, and there were kids who were killed by the police, or people who had died or been abused by officers, or false convictions that had happened since then that had been revealed after 10, 20 years. I would sit there as in the 10 years from now, 5 maybe next year, and think, you know what, Victor, you had the knowledge and the ability to do something about it, and you didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't live with that.
Well, I was like, yeah, I didn't want Victor to run, because it's caused a lot of upheaval in our family life. I mean, it's just really hard. And yet, the discussion that we had, and whenever it was, I don't remember when it was, end of April, and he said, I wanna do this, and I said, really? And he said, what do you think? And I said, if you need to know, can you live with yourself if you don't run? And the answer was no, that this is what he had to do. And he is a man who speaks truth to power. I would always like to hear it, because I am the power inside. But what you see is what you get with him. And no, he's not always nice, but there he is, and he'll do a great job, so.